Wait, was Drake's statement that Jim Jones is superior to Nas accurate? Similar to plastic nausea, Nas Mike. That's nauseous indeed. And you know what? He's quite serious. Drake's spiteful nature was already known to us. This is the same guy who released whole albums to disparage his rivals. But co-signing Jim Jones and dragging a hip-hop legend into a feud that wasn't even his will. Yes, it becomes wilder and hits differently this time. Jim Jones is also not going to back down. He's out here praising Drake, the greatest of all time, over Nas, and discussing Billboard statistics as if they were the 10 Commandments. Jay-Z to all of you. He has essentially been proclaimed the king of rap by men, and he is getting more aggressive with each interview. However, what caused all of this chaos? What caused Drake to change sides in the middle of a match like a villain? In WWE, a particular clip album and a very shady feature from Nas that pushed Champagne Papi into full meltdown mode may be the explanation. People, fasten your seatbelts. This isn't your typical rap feud. This is a full-fledged conflict that combines a loyalty test, legacy warfare, and ego war. And it's only going to get messier, I promise. Let's examine the insanity. Let's set the record straight. One day, Jim Jones's Ballin', Jim Jones woke up out of the blue and made the decision to take on Nas, one of the most untouchable characters in hip-hop history. Even more astounding was the fact that Drake, Mr. Multi-Platinum, Mr. I Wear My Heart, peered out of nowhere and declared, "You know what? Jim is correct. Nausea isn't all that." What? This is the equivalent of spitting in the hip-hop holy grail, in an industry that thrives on respect, particularly for icons like Nas, but without hesitation. Drake, as if they had just won a championship. He and Jim are out here clinking glasses. And what the internet was seeing was unbelievable. Let's go back a little. This whole thing began when Jim Jones, who had just finished his normal dramatic antics, boldly announced in an interview that he was hotter than Nas, had done more for the game, and even said that Nas didn't matter until he brought him back into the spotlight. Yes, exactly. As if NS requires a DiePet cosign to trend, he claimed to have made it become viral. Hip-hop enthusiasts were furious. From Queensbridge studios to Atlanta basements, fans everywhere referred to it as diluted. It wasn't just disagreements. They were miming, dragging, and making fun of Jim until he was forgotten. Drake, however, appeared like the protagonist of a revenge film just when it appeared that everything was about to settle. Furthermore, he did more than simply support Jim in private. He made it very evident by openly supporting him, taking photos, making toasts, and expressing his affection for a man who had just disregarded one of hip-hop's most revered names. And now the issue was, why? Why would Drake, of all people, get involved in this situation? Because if Drake is skilled at anything, it's choosing a side when it fits his story, particularly when petty retaliation is involved. Nas and Drake were never adversaries. Indeed, Drake had in interviews. They publicly complimented Nas. He saw him as an influence, a lyrical legend, and a pioneer. However, all of that admiration vanished when Nas, a project executive who is produced by someone Drake despises, appeared on an upcoming album. At that point, things became personal. Yes, the new Clips album has Nas. Drake was already feeling deceived by that alone. You see, loyalty is one of Drake's main triggers. Additionally, he believes that you are not neutral if you collaborate with Pusha T, the same individual who almost ruined Drake's reputation in a single diss track. You've taken a stance, and there's no better way to react than to support the only rapper who has the audacity to criticize Nas. Jim Jones provided Drake with the ideal outlet for his annoyance. He didn't even need to utter the words. Jim was the one who spoke, insulted, and yelled the most. Drake only needed to grin and stand by him, and he did precisely that. Riding high on the debate, Jim pushed forward. In each interview, he stepped up his game, attacking Billboard figures, claiming Drake was the best of all time, and dismissing Nas as being out of date and overrated. Fans, however, didn't buy it. Not even close. 'Twas a vicious blowback. The notion that Nas is comparable to Jim Jones is ridiculed by the majority of the hip-hop community. They didn't even call it a discussion. That's the punchline, right? People were saying stuff like, that's like comparing a Bentley to a bicycle, and Jim Jones is better than Nas. There was more disdain than that. Jim said Nas had never been this way before. Viral in his life, and that Jim alone was responsible for the present buzz surrounding him. Nas continued to remain mute. No Instagram subtweets, no tweets, not even a phrase or a bar. Just total unconcerned quiet. And that quiet was more audible than Jim's words. Jim, however, saw it as a win. He said, "I'm right," which is why he isn't answering. He is unable to dispute my assertions. Drake's backing, in his opinion, was evidence that the culture was changing, that the status quo needed to change, and that he was at last in a position of authority. Drake, on the other hand, is playing chess rather than checkers. Drake didn't only co-sign a crazy viewpoint when he sided with Jim, since it wasn't simply NS on that Clips album. He placed himself across from Nas, and consequently, across from anyone associated with Pusha T. Who else is featured, you ask? Lamar, Kendrick. The parts of the puzzle suddenly began to fit together, following one of the most vicious lyrical beatdowns in contemporary rap. Kendrick Lamar destroyed Drake. It wasn't only a feature list, now showing up with Push A and Nas. That was a message, an alliance, and a proclamation, and it was clearly received by Drake. Drake did what he always does, which is to dominate the narrative rather than battle it out lyrically. He allowed Jim to go to war with Nas so Drake wouldn't have to, creased his profile, enhanced his voice, and posed with him. It was no coincidence. Drake doesn't make snap decisions. Every image, post, and cosign is calculated. And he did what he does best when he noticed the triumvirate of Pusha, Kendrick, and Nas developing on the horizon. Without writing a single word, he created headlines, started a diversion, and returned to the debate. The rest of the world is watching for something else, that Clips album, while he and Jim are the center of attention. 'Cause everyone will be listening for the same thing when it drops. Subliminals. In his verse, Nas even makes reference to Drake if Kendrick makes even the slightest remark. Drake's whole scheme will fail if Pusha, as anticipated, takes another lyrical stab. Supporting Jim will no longer appear to be loyal. It will appear desperate. We're currently hanging on that cliffhanger. Because this goes beyond a few sultry interviews or photos on Instagram. This is about a lyrical relationship, heritage, and alliances. Battleground, which is getting bigger every day. And that's only the beginning. We dissect the reactions in the second section. How Drake's lawsuit against Universal is a part of a larger power move that nobody anticipated. What fans are actually saying, and what insiders believe is happening behind the scenes. Thus, the fire had already begun to burn. However, it wasn't merely a flex when Drake shared that famous picture of him with Jim Jones, in which Jim wrote, "Men of respect, mafia rules, toast to the last ones left." A full-fledged declaration of war, that is. Additionally, if you believed that the supporters would overlook this, you were mistaken. The internet took off. Battlegrounds emerged from Twitter discussions. Conspiracy theories exploded on Reddit forums. Even ants on Facebook said, "Drizzy, this isn't it." In addition to being perplexed, people were repulsed. Some admirers refer to it as blatantly delusional, while another said, "How are two of the corniest rappers alive out here dissing a lyrical god?" This is a tactic. It's advertising. The dip is set wage, make things chaotic, sell records. Drake, on the other hand, is taking things easy and letting Jim be his soldier. According to those with knowledge of the matter, Drake has been more enraged. then most people understand. Kendrick didn't simply make him feel betrayed. What triggered him? Feel sick? The switch was flicked by that one feature on the Clip CD. Drake had previously regarded Nas as neutral ground, a respected original, and someone who avoided controversy. However, Nas is currently in the studio with two of Drake's most vicious rivals, Pusha T and Kendrick Lamar. It was more than just a team effort. It was treacherous. And if you look more closely, the indications were already present. He praised Kendrick's album on Instagram a few weeks prior to the release of this Nas feature news, calling him a king and stating that he captures the spirit. The internet went into detective mode just for that. People began making connections between the album's release, the caption, and the date. And then, bang. Nas appears on a song produced by Pharrell, who has been pushing his right-hand man since. The beginning? Is it a coincidence? Not even close. Drake was on the outside looking in all of a sudden. A line had been carved in the sand by the poetic titans, the legends. And you know who stood by himself? What does Drake do then? Of all people, he connects with Jim Jones. Why Jim is noisy? Jim is careless. What Drake cannot say, Jim is willing to say. It would have appeared desperate if Drake had made straight fun of Nas. It is plausible deniability. However, if Jim says it and Drake merely nods in agreement, he may always claim, "Hey, I didn't say anything." However, the criticism has been unrelenting and fans aren't stupid. Drake's really out here ducking smoke and sending Jim Jones to fight his battles. And this is like sending a squirt gun to a forest fire. We read in one particularly scathing tweet, even industry insiders are calling foul. Jim Jones thinks he's going viral, but he's just being used like a decoy duck in a hunting field. Everyone sees through this. Drake's trying to manipulate the optics, but it's not working this time. An anonymous executive from a major label told us. Another producer who previously collaborated with both Drake and Kendrick stated, Drake doesn't want lyrical smoke. He wants image control. This is all a publicity stunt. Additionally, it's important to remember that Jim Jones isn't exactly regarded as a lyrical heavyweight. People are fed up with his theatrics. He has existed for many years. Sure, he's had hits, but it's ridiculous in comparison to Nas. A meme is one, and a poet is the other. The culture is aware that there are degrees to this. On this one, even Nas supporters who don't usually voice their opinions became vocal. One tweet said, "Let's not even pretend this is close." Jim posted a weather report on Instagram last week. Nas dropped Illmatic at 20. Another remarked, Jim Jones is better than Nas. Is this a parallel world where Dipset won the Cold War? So, Jim is stepping up his game, saying outrageous things like Nas has never been this relevant. And Drake is my spirit animal. Yes, spirit animal. And that brings us to the latest twist, the Angie Martinez interview. Jim's been teasing it for weeks. Snippets are already making the rounds. And in one clip, he flat out says, respect doesn't matter if no one's talking about you. According to him, Nas hasn't spoken in years and just became popular again because he dared to bring him up. In the meantime, Nas hasn't released a single word, not even a mysterious Instagram story. Silence is powerful because Nas doesn't need to answer. It's already proven everything. Decades of classics, Grammys, international respect, and now even bigger alliances. Kay is watching all of this from a distance, measuring, calculating, and waiting. But insiders say he's rattled. That Kendrick disc stung. That Nas feature cut deep. And that Jim alliance is looking more and more like a panic move. Some fans believe Drake will still release something in response, such as a surprise disc, a feature, or even a bar hidden in his next album. But others say he won't risk it. Not after what happened with Pusha T. That scar runs deep, which is why he's using legal teams instead of lyricism now. The reason part 2 ends at the height of the chaos, the height of delusion, and the edge of what could be the biggest lyrical war this generation has witnessed is because Jim is burning every bridge he has just to feel important while Drake is playing puppet master. He's everywhere on Twitter and podcasts. And in radio shows, and he's milking this like it's his last chance at a headline. In his video, we're diving headfirst into the fallout, the lawsuits, the industry whispers, the rumored retaliation, tracks, and the terrifying possibility that Drake might actually lose everything he's built. If the rumors are accurate, the industry is beginning to shift quietly and cautiously behind the scenes, and managers are making phone calls. Record executives and publicists are pleading with their artists to stay out of the fray, hoping that it doesn't turn into a full-fledged conflict because the hip-hop community is aware of how quickly things can get out of hand when ego, money, and loyalty are mixed together. The Drake, Jim Jones, and Nas triangle case is becoming a perfect storm. First, let's start with Drake, whose lawsuit against Universal Music Group isn't just some trivial paperwork. It's a conflict with his own label, a label that helped develop him, a label that fed the beast for more than 10 years. Drake is essentially accusing the label of betrayal, claiming that they permitted Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us to be released without his consent. Despite agreements that purportedly gave him a say in the release process, according to insiders, Drake is suing over lost power, not just the song, because when Not Like Us blew up and UMG did nothing to stop it. That sent a message that Drake no longer runs this game, and Drake can't handle that. So what does he do? He flips the narrative, aligns himself with Jim Jones, and tries to shift the conversation from his legal L's to a new lyrical debate. Who's the greatest, Drake or Nas? It's calculated and desperate, and it could backfire. Jim Jones is taking this spotlight and running with it like a man who knows his 15 minutes might not last long. He's throwing verbal haymakers in every interview, saying he's more relevant than NS, accusing NS fans of living in the past and referring to Drake as the most influential artist of the modern era. He even implied that he is the one keeping Nas name trending and that Nas has never faced the kind of criticism he is currently receiving. The delusion is unreal, but some people are buying into it. A few younger fans who aren't familiar with Nas' catalog are actually beginning to question the narrative. Wait, who really has more Billboard hits? Who has the longer run? Who's more global? See, that's where Drake's strategy works. He simply needs to confuse it. He needs enough noise to make it seem like there is a genuine question here. And with Jim talking nonstop, the distraction is working for the time being. Game, he's staying quiet, completely silent. And that silence is powerful because while Jim and Drake are fighting for influence, Nas is moving like a chess master, focused, unbothered, letting his legacy do the talking. When fans learned that Nas was collaborating with Pusha T and Kendrick on the upcoming Clips album, everything changed. The quiet Og was back in the mix, not on the blogs or Instagram, but in the music where it truly matters, and people noticed. Let God Sort Out Chandeliers. The song on which Nas is featured hasn't even been released yet, but it's already causing panic in Drake's camp. This isn't because it's a diss, but rather because it places Nas on the side of the opposition. And now Drake must deal with something he's always avoided: isolation. He is no longer the kingmaker. Kendrick is dominating the charts. Pusha T's reputation as a cunning tactician is unaffected. Referred to him as the Bobby Fischer of rap, a master strategist, and that comparison is more relevant now than ever because while Jim is playing attack dog and Drake is making headlines, Nas is moving pieces that no one sees coming. Rumors are circulating that Nas and Pusha T recorded multiple songs, and some even believe that Nas may be executive producing a portion of the Clips album. If even one of those theories is correct, though, Drake will have a serious problem because when the true lyricists band together, when the ones who don't need gimmicks decide to unite the streets, The labels and the fans are all watching. He is avoiding the pen, the booth, the bars, and the very thing that launched his career. And no matter how many interviews Jim Jones does or how many lawsuits Drake files, none of that will change the facts. Drake may make headlines, but he is losing respect, and Pusha and Kendrick are sharpening their swords. This isn't just a beef. It's a battle for credibility, legacy, and truth. And at the moment, Drake is making the wrong moves. He believed that co-signing Jim Jones would change the conversation. But it only served to highlight how far he has strayed from the essence, the art, and the culture that once made him king. Now, the court of public opinion is in session, and the verdict, well, let's say the jury isn't leaning in. The real fire hasn't even started yet, so stay tuned. Now that the dust is settling, at least for a moment, we have to ask, is this really what hip-hop has come to? Drake is co-signing Jim Jones in order to send subliminal messages to a man who hasn't even bothered to mention his name. He's chasing headlines instead of writing verses. And Jim is shouting into thin air, hoping that someone, anyone, will take him seriously as a nauseous rival. However, Nas has been quiet, focused, and cool as ice, and that silence is louder than any diss. Let's face it, Drake's recent actions feel more like desperation than strategy. This isn't the same man who bodied Meek Mill in 2015. This is a man watching the throne slip from his fingers while the next generation locks arms against him. Kendrick, Pusha, Nas, and Pharrell did not disparage Drake. Rather, they dismissed him, and that may have caused more pain than any bar could. What do you think? Has Drake officially lost the plot? Is Jim Jones the only one still riding shotgun with him? Or is this all some next-level genius move that we haven't yet figured out? If you're sick of clout-chasing cosigns, like this video, subscribe for more breakdowns. It's more beef and more truth they don't want you to hear. And share this with a friend who still believes that Billboard stats indicate lyrical supremacy. This isn't just gossip. It's a war for the culture. And if you believe it's over, trust me, it's just getting started. See you in the next round. Loud, remain woke. And if you're sensitive, avoid the comment area because the truth doesn't give a damn.